Well, there. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Before we dive in, I thought I'd hit you with a little bit of housekeeping and run through a few quick points to help us all get the most of our time together. So in terms of accessibility, live captions are available, and sessions are recorded and will be sent via email following the session. Your camera and microphone are both disabled in this session. However, engagement is encouraged. So please do use the chat, the Q&A, and please be respectful of different communication styles. The chat and the Q&A, so please use those for questions to both Laura and myself. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can, and either our moderators will also answer during the session, or we can discuss them at the end. The chat is open for comments, reflections, and questions, so please use those respectfully and kindly. The moderators will be keeping an eye on it throughout. Please be respectful and inclusive in all comments. Hate speech and harassment or discriminatory language will not be tolerated. And the recording and privacy, just a point on that is that the session is being recorded. So we're here to learn and grow together, so please help us maintain a space where everyone feels safe, heard, and valued. So yeah, just to kind of give you a little bit of information on who we are. I am Olivia. I'm a business psychologist here at Microlink within the neurodiversity team. And I support neurodivergent adults in the workplace, and I work with line managers to build confidence in managing neurodiverse teams. And I also facilitate co-coaching and collaborative approaches that strengthen relationships and create inclusive cultures.
Hi, Olivia, and everybody joining here today. My name is Laura McLaughlin. I'm also a business psychologist here at Microlink. I mainly work with clients and managers, especially with coaching, co-coaching, much as Olivia said, build those helpful, supportive working practices and relationships. Just to give you a quick visual description, you can see my very colourful Microlink background. It has, I think, all the colors of the rainbow pretty much. And today I'm wearing a blue jumper and looking forward to having this exciting discussion with you all.
Brilliant. I wanted to share a few little learning objectives with you for our webinar. The festive season can be a wonderful time, but it also brings unique challenges, especially when it comes to inclusion. So today we wanted to explore some practical ways to make this time of year more supportive and welcoming for everyone. And so yeah, the main theme of this session is to look at key practices to support neurodivergent colleagues during the festive season, and how we can plan with inclusion in mind. Laura will talk a little bit about using inclusive language and why respecting cultural differences really matters. The next, we'll explore how to manage changes to routine, because we know that even small disruptions can feel big for some individuals. And we'll also discuss planning on social activities inclusively, so everyone feels comfortable joining in. And finally, we'll touch on ways to support family and friends when social events come up outside of work. And I'll stop sharing for now.
Thank you, Olivia. So one of the first points that Olivia mentioned there was how to be, how we can consider being inclusive of cultural differences during the celebrations of the festive season, especially when we think about the language that we would maybe use. And this is actually a really relevant starting point, because when we were considering the title for this webinar, we really did think that we should steer clear of any religious assumptions, for example. And we really wanted to highlight the universal themes that bring us together, especially at this time of year. Themes of kindness, gratitude, shared joy. So it's a wonderful time of year to celebrate diversity. We get to mention various celebrations such as Christmas, Hanukkah, Hogmanay, the New Year, and it can be a good time to appreciate all of those differences. Or we can simply refer to it as the festive season, trying to capture all of those in one go, wishing people season's greetings, for example, in the language that we choose. Also, for organizations, if they are wanting to promote festivities, it can be really helpful for them to also consider not just the language they use, but the visuals that they use alongside that. For example, you might want to consider using more kind of inclusive images, such as snowflakes, stars, or lights, rather than just Christmas specific symbols, such as nativity scenes. Now, you'll notice on our opening slide and in the marketing material we produced, we actually created the imagery of this webinar and we utilized the existing logo that we had, which is a brain image, and we incorporated a Santa hat to indicate that this was about the festive season. And at this point, although Santa hat might be kind of deemed as sort of more for towards Christmas, it did seem an appropriate symbol to use on our existing logo. So by taking the time to consider not just the title, the language that we used, and the imagery, we hope it helped inform an inclusive practice for us. And certainly, working within the neurodiversity support team, Olivia and I aim to promote inclusive working practices to support neurodivergent individuals in the workplace, especially during the festive season, when work routines can be changing, expectations to socialize can increase. And to consider this, we could first of all look at how to manage the change to the usual work routine. On to you, Olivia.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, for many neurodivergent colleagues, structure and predictability are really key. And when that structure shifts because of annual leave or deadlines being moved forward or the general end of year rush, it can feel overwhelming. And if we think about it, it's not just neurodivergent individuals. I guess most of us feel the pressure when everything speeds up before the holidays. So how do we manage this without burning out or working extra hours when life outside of work already feels pretty busy?
Mm.
A few practical tips are communication, making it sure it's clear and also communicating early. So let your colleagues know what your capacity looks like and what you can realistically take on. Check deadlines carefully. Is that task really due before someone's annual leave, or could it wait until they're back? And sometimes just asking that question can really already ease that pressure. Also, if you can manage expectations, for example, if a colleague asks for a report before they go on leave, clarify whether they actually need to review it before they're off, or if it can be sent while you're working and they can pick it up when they return. And very importantly, push back where possible. Those good old boundaries. If a deadline feels unreasonable, try and suggest alternatives. Often people don't realize the impact of shifting timelines until we raise it.
Yes, I think as well, it can also be really helpful just to anticipate that there might be a change to the usual work routine, that deadlines might feel a bit more pressurized. And it can be really helpful to anticipate this, to block out time in your diary in advance, just to ensure that you feel that you have enough time to finish up, for example, before you go on annual leave, to give you a clear indication of those deadline expectations as well. And also, just to help you, it's time to perhaps wind down, tidy up before annual leave, not to maybe start new tasks, for example. It could also then be helpful if you do have those new tasks to make sure that, again, in advance, you're blocking out time in your diary and setting reminders to attend to those when you return from annual leave. Hopefully, this will allow you just to switch off slightly, knowing that you have, anticipated and planned and prepared as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, Laura, because I mean, I guess with this planning ahead as much as possible, if you've got tasks that won't be finished before you head off, try not to leave them hanging. So take a few minutes to plan ahead, block out time in your calendar for when you're back so that you're not scrambling or feeling behind. A little forward planning now can make such a difference to when you come back, and it can just make it all much smoother. And a little question maybe to consider for our audience. And if you want to, you can respond in the chat. What's the one thing that you do before annual leave to make your return easier?
Oh, that's such a good question, Olivia. And you know what? I'm going to answer that for myself. I block out an hour on my first day back just to go through emails. Although
Yep.
hopefully over, the festive season, because so many people are taking annual leave, those emails might reduce, but still it just gives me a bit of time to collect my thoughts and ease back into things. Do you have a top tip for yourself?
I'm the same. Definitely also blocking out a bit of time.
Yeah.
I'm religious with my diary, so I mean I do check it frequently. But yeah, that just kind of bit of time for getting your head around being back to work and just kind of getting your head around also all the emails that have come in can make all the difference.
Yeah, yeah. Now, it is the festive season, absolutely. So there is that expectation that more people take annual leave. However, there's also that unplanned absence to perhaps consider and build in contingency time for, because it is unfortunately the time for festive colds and viruses as well, which isn't something that obviously we want to have, but it can be really helpful just to build in that contingency, just to help ensure that, there's no extra pressure that is created by unexpected absence. For example, if you're giving a presentation with a colleague, you could perhaps ask another colleague if they could be part of the planning at any point or discuss things, so they could almost step in as an understudy if they're needed to.
Yeah, that's some really good points. So I feel like the real takeaway is just clear communication. It helps set boundaries, it helps manage expectations, and it also helps keep workloads realistic and a bit more under control, so that you can really finish your year strong without sacrificing your well-being. So, yeah, another little question for the audience, if you fancy. What's one thing that you do? Oh, sorry, no, that's the one I asked already. Apologies. Never mind. I'll move on to socializing at work.
Ah, yes.
Yep, that's a big thing. I guess that's really all around us just now. And for some people, this might be the highlight of the year, but for others, it can feel stressful or even overwhelming. So not everyone enjoys the same type of social activity, and that's okay. So how can we make these events more inclusive? One great approach is to offer options if you can. So instead of just a big party or a formal dinner, consider a mix of activities. For example, a relaxed coffee morning in the office for those who prefer a quieter setting, or a meal out or a party for those who enjoy a more social atmosphere, or even something active like an escape room or a team activity for those who love a bit of a challenge. The key is really to try and give people choice so they can join in where they feel most comfortable. And also, don't forget some of those practical considerations. So, check the accessibility of venues and activities. Provide any necessary adaptations for physical requirements. And if your organization has a neurodiversity employee resource group, one of the ERGs, or also a disability network, try and tap into their experience and their expertise, because that can really offer some practical insights to make the event more inclusive.
Thank you. Yeah. And in terms of attending events, I think it sometimes can be really helpful for individuals to really prepare and plan as much as they can. Even just thinking about the transport, how to get there. Would it be nicer to go with a colleague if possible, rather than turn up on your own, for example? And getting there is one thing, but it's very important to think about, how can I make my exit? Do I have plans? Am I reliant on other people for those? Can I make them independently? Or again, ask a colleague to join me. It can be quite helpful to reduce the stress to have that planned in advance. And in terms of the people planning the events, again, thinking about those practical arrangements, perhaps giving options for transport, even if this is a train station nearby, this is the nearest bus station, this is the nearest taxi rank. Giving options as well can be reassuring, especially if people are traveling to new places. Again, it can be just harder for them to anticipate what they might need to do. Again, I'm on a more practical side. If you're planning an event, it can be so helpful to provide a really clear dress code. Now, I know a lot of places like to be a bit more informal, especially for social events, and that is wonderful. But what does informal mean? Examples can be so helpful. Are jeans acceptable? Does formal actually mean that when it's a festive event that people want to be dressed up? Should we be sparkly? Should we wear ties? There's a lot to consider. And it might be that all of these are completely acceptable, and giving those as an example allows people maybe just to help plan, feel a little less stressed about it, and know that they are, dressing in a way that it will be expected of them. But it's nice as well, rather than making that instructional, you could also explain, you know, it could be along the lines of, we really want this event to feel special. So if you feel comfortable, consider dressing as you would for a special evening out or a family occasion. And again, helping people understand that it is a celebration, it is a special event. And that's why perhaps the dress code is the one that's given. And another thing for people planning, and this is a difficult one, but quite often the people organizing and planning have put so much time and effort into that, but they can share that with us. It actually helps. If we have a timetable for activities, for example, it can really help people plan and also allow them to consider which part of the activities and event they want to be part of and they feel comfortable being part of it. As you mentioned before, Olivia, having alternatives could also be incorporated within that same event, such as a quieter area if you want to go for drinks. Explaining, that there will be a drinks reception at which both alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks will be there. If you want teas and coffees, there could be loads of different options. And again, that just helps people anticipate and plan and hopefully reduce that stress. But again, perhaps, that timetable of events includes this is when the sit down meal will start. We've also organised a wonderful quiz for you, and we're going to round off the evening with dancing and a DJ. But giving a timing for all of these can help people think, actually, I would love the dinner. I don't really need the quiz, but I can't wait for the dancing. And it allows them to plan for that. They can think, I can go and sit in a quieter area at that point or go for a walk. So giving that detailed information without the expectation that everybody is going to need it or review it, but can really help people who do need it as well. So providing it for everybody without them having to ask for it can be really helpful. And I've got a question for the chat as well for people who are here. Do any of you have examples of work events that you've been to that you've really enjoyed? If you would feel free, you can share that in the chat. It would be lovely to hear about those. And also, if you felt that they were inclusive, for yourself, for other people, how did you feel about that? And if you have examples of how you think they were inclusive, that could be helpful too.
Yeah, those are some really good points, Laura. I mean, especially I think the point about dress code. I think kind of with our line of work being kind of mainly remote, that's something I would probably struggle with quite a bit now. What do I wear? What do I feel comfortable wearing? Um, and yeah, especially the timetable, I think is a really, really good point. And I know you've already kind of hinted at it, giving the people really the freedom to opt in or out of different parts of an event is so meaningful. And that is where this clear timetable of activities can come in so handy. Everyone knows what's happening and when. And when you ask for RSVPs, make those choices obvious. So let people pick what they like to join rather than feeling pressured to attend everything. And also in terms of individual preferences, I know this can kind of, feel a lot to maybe consider, but if you can take the time to gather people's preferences because it can make such a difference. Things like seating arrangements, music choices, or even how food is served can impact comfort levels. If you don't have this information up front, check whether the venue or the activity offers a flexibility. A little planning here can turn an event from stressful to enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah, and I think that would be the goal for anyone organizing any event, to have as many people, ideally everybody, to enjoy that event for different reasons, absolutely, but you still want them to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a big part of that is really providing that clear communication in advance. What are the options? Just to help manage the expectations. Perhaps then, if there is any feedback, it can help identify any barriers to people attending that you hadn't considered or hadn't been aware of. And there might still be time to make those adjustments without too much, changing of plans as well. So I think that is really important, that all this time and effort goes into planning and organizing events, and communicating should be a huge big part of that as well to help everyone attend it.
Yeah, and if we talk about little traditions like, Secret Santa, which some places of work like to engage in, or even families. For some, that's a fun tradition, but for others, it can feel quite stressful. Questions like, am I spending too much, or will they even like that, can add some unnecessary pressure. So,
Mhm.
how do we make something like Secret Santa more enjoyable for everyone? Again, communication. So start by defining clear boundaries. Agree on a spending limit, something that's reasonable, something like 5 to 10 pounds, and share simple guidelines to make it fun and less stressful. For example, buy something under 5 pounds that a person can wear at work. So adding a playful challenge can take the pressure off and make it more creative. And here I've got another little question for the audience, for those who would like to answer. Is something like Secret Santa something that you love or that you dread? So, yeah. And also to round off this topic of socializing at work, something that is often overlooked is feedback. So gather some feedback where possible. And if turnout was low or you have a sense that people felt uncomfortable, try and find out why. You can ask things like, what worked well and what could we do differently next time? Because that really helps you plan future events that feel inclusive and enjoyable for everyone. And it's also, I guess, from a business sense, in terms of, whether you're wasting money or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, spending too much money when people haven't attended or enjoyed it doesn't make too much sense. So that is a great point to make.
Mhm.
Just another point, veering slightly off the aspect of socializing, although kind of considering that it is a very busy time of year for people, both at work and outside of work. There can be a lot of extra commitments. For example, you want to attend a child's carol concert, and again, don't necessarily use up precious annual leave to do that. And work is busy. I don't really want to take that full day off. So it can be really helpful, if possible, and this would obviously have to be feasible within the workplace, for managers and HR to consider flexi working time, especially at this busy time of year that impacts so many people. It could help people attend those extra events that don't necessarily need to take a day, but allow them to attend those and make up that time at another point. Um, and if this is at all possible, rather than waiting for people to have to ask for it, it can be really helpful to reduce the stress of this by communicating that in advance, whether it's a usual working practice or it's an additional working practice at this time of year to help people. It really could be helpful, again, for it to be communicated to reduce the stress and to know that you have these options. But back to socializing.
Yeah, I guess in terms of big family gatherings, I guess many of us have been on either side of it, where we can feel that they're wonderful, but they can also feel really overwhelming, especially if you're someone who prefers quieter settings. And one way to ease the pressure is to plan smaller get-togethers, maybe where possible, so you can connect without the chaos. And if a large event is unavoidable, try to prepare ahead. Maybe set a time limit for how long you'll stay and make sure you allow yourself some downtime afterwards to recharge. Even something simple like scheduling a quiet evening or a calming activity can make such a difference. And when planning events for family and friends, it's also really helpful to consider any neurodivergent family members and individuals attending to their needs. So again, with this, consider scheduling smaller gatherings if possible, or prepare to attend larger gatherings by allowing time to relax afterwards. And when planning events, maybe especially with different generations attending, it's also really important to consider options that can be as inclusive as possible. Again, communication is key, and it can help others to understand if things are planned differently to their expectations. For example, again, with grandparents, it can be good to maybe ask them to remember what they liked or disliked about their childhood celebrations. And that can help them to understand why you might do things differently to support your children and others to enjoy the party.
Thank you, Olivia. That's such a great idea. Um, I do remember, a grandparent saying to me, if I was my child, not eating Christmas dinner and having a different dish. And I explained that that was because that was their preference, and we just let them have their favorite food on a special day. But later on, the discussion became about, well, what did you like? What did you dislike about, especially the meal, because that was the point that they had raised. And their point was actually that they were always asked to finish the food on their plate and they were given Brussels sprouts and they did not like Brussels sprouts. And to the point that they still didn't like Brussels sprouts many years later. And we kind of said, well, what if you didn't have to eat the Brussels sprouts? What if they weren't on your plate? Would that have enhanced your enjoyment? Would it have taken away that slight, disenjoyment of the occasion? And they agreed and said, well, that's what we're doing with our child. So again, asking people for their examples, their experiences, and trying to relate to them can really help just build that understanding as to why you might do things slightly differently.
Yeah, moving away from these social expectations. And again, also playing into this whole planning, if you're planning something for your child or involving them, give them plenty of notice if possible. I know that's something that I don't always get right with my own kids, but if you can share the details early and ask for their input and talk about the fun parts so that they know what to expect. And yeah, involve them in the planning because that helps them feel included and gives them a sense of control. And it can also help reduce any anxiety about surprises.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Olivia. And then perhaps if when you've shared what's happening, given them that expectation, and they've identified something that they're not comfortable with, that perhaps might be overwhelming for them, allow them to opt out if you can. For example, if they don't wish to sit at the main table, having a big dinner with everybody, could they have an alternative seat? Or maybe they don't feel comfortable opening presents in front of lots of people, feeling as if they're in the spotlight, as it were. Maybe you could arrange to swap gifts in advance, place them under the tree to be opened in private, or at a day that feels less overwhelming. There should be options, hopefully, that you can come to help your children manage things as much as possible. Another big thing, just going back to the meal, because the festive season does seem to revolve quite a bit around food, doesn't it?
Oh,
And
yeah.
sometimes that's not to everybody's preference. So try to be considerate about foods, try to provide alternatives. And especially for children, although for adults, absolutely as well. Think of their favorites. What are their safe foods? They're going to help provide them with a bit of comfort and familiarity, especially when things might be a bit overwhelming for them at that time.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, food is, I guess, the main part of these festive times, it seems. And obviously, another one, and I know you've already mentioned it, Laura, is gift exchanges.
Mm.
Gift exchanges and the festive spending can bring a lot of financial and emotional stress, both at work and at home. So not everyone has the same budget or feels comfortable with the pressure to spend. And one way to ease this is by maybe offering alternatives like charity donations or non-monetary participation. That keeps the spirit of giving alive without adding unnecessary strain. And examples of gifts that don't have to cost anything are things like handwritten notes or cards or doing things like skill sharing. So that could be something that you're good at, like baking, cooking, or building. I mean, I guess the world is your oyster when it comes to that. I don't know if anybody has any other good examples of things that they've given that don't involve spending money. So would love to see some maybe in the chat if you're happy to share. And in terms of also differences with traditions, I don't know if anybody else does, but I definitely need a reminder every so often that it's okay to say that our family does things differently. When my kids ask me, why aren't we doing things like Elf on the Shelf? A personal anecdote from me is that we don't do Elf on the Shelf, but we do our version of German Nikolaus on the 6th of December. And I grew up in a German American household, and we always used our Christmas stockings for Nikolaus rather than the typical tradition, which is putting shoes outside to be filled with nuts and oranges and apples. And that's one that I'm continuing with my family as well.
I love that, Olivia. I love how you've adapted that tradition, like your family, and then you're continuing it onwards and just kind of making it your own. I think that is
Yeah.
a nice thing, nice idea. And as you said, we don't have to do what everybody else is doing all the time.
Yeah, ex exactly. I mean, the social pressures, they're definitely present, especially with kids coming home from school and hearing all the fun stories of, especially things like Elf on the Shelf. But for me personally, that was something that I was happy to opt out of.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk a little bit about something that often gets overlooked, especially by those who don't experience it as much, sensory overload. The festive season can be full of bright lights, decorations, music playing everywhere, crowded spaces, and strong smells, whether that's from foods, candles, or incense. And for some people, especially those who are neurodivergent, this can be overwhelming and exhausting. And the impact is that when sensory input piles up, that can lead to stress, and also anxiety and even physical discomfort. So, what can we do to make that a bit easier for ourselves and for others? A few suggestions are like in the workplace, you can try and maybe keep decorations minimal in shared spaces or check with the team before adding lots of lights, especially maybe flashing lights
Mm.
and scents. If you do have them, offer quiet zones or breakout spaces where people can step away if they need a sensory break. When you're out and about, if you're attending events, try and plan ahead and choose quieter times or venues when you can control your environment a little more. And at home, it's, I guess, always within our control or at least a bit more. Create a calm space with softer lighting and maybe fewer strong smells. And also a little tip, maybe a little practical tip. You could consider putting together a sensory kit for yourself when you're out and about or for work. And that can include things like noise canceling headphones or sunglasses or fidget tools or even a calming scent if you like, for example, hand cream that you find soothing. And having things like that on hand can make such a difference.
Oh, yeah, I think you're so right, Liv. Like, even just knowing that they're there sometimes just helps you kind of feel a bit more in control of a situation that you might find quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
And again, it's that allowing yourself to prepare for that and yeah, take something back for yourself there as well. But yeah, it's amazing how those small things can actually make such a nice big difference and really help in those stressful situations. And just to add to that as well, it could be a bit of time to discuss with your children, family, with colleagues. What do you do at this time of year to help yourself with those situations, to help manage your mental energy, to perhaps kind of restore mental clarity, empower yourself as well in those situations? Because by choosing to do things, activities, habits, all of those kind of things that we can do for ourselves, that we can choose to do, that could help restore, recharge us, help us then kind of navigate the more stressful situations that perhaps might drain that mental energy. Again, it's quite nice. It is empowering. And it's something that we can do for ourselves, but we can consider the needs of other people as well. So it might be, going for a nice walk, maybe by yourself, or maybe by, another family member or friend who is also feeling a little bit stressed and could help with that as well. But it could be trying to create some quiet time for your children. Again, just to help them relax, focus on an activity. Making paper chains was an example. When my children were younger, we used to like to do that just to perhaps have a bit of quiet time, focus time before then leaving the house so it didn't feel too rushed and stressful. But at the same time, we would sometimes come home after an event and just have the music blaring and have to dance off that energy as well. So just think about all the fun things that you can do that are nice for yourself, and also the activities you can incorporate with other people as well that are, again, just help give yourself a little bit of time to restore your energy, hopefully to then keep you going for the next event as well.
Yeah, that plays so well into this whole idea of energy management, I think. And again, also what you're saying about with kids, and it models kind of, these important ways in which we can manage our energy to our kids.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a wonderful time of year. And it's not that we're saying that these situations are all going to drain our energy. It's just that management to help keep us going so that we kind of can enjoy as much as we can.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that is really important. It is such a busy time of year, and we want to be able to maximize that positive potential from all of the activities that we do. It can also be really helpful just to remember that it is just this time of year. And okay, and it comes around every year, doesn't it? And it can be really helpful to remember we don't have to do things the same way year in, year out. We can reflect what worked, what didn't work. What do we want to do more of? What do we want to maybe reduce a little bit? You don't have to do things the same way every year. The same way you don't have to do things the same way other people do. You can create your own traditions, but you can adapt them, especially within the family. As families grow older or they change size, there can be different needs and requirements because of that as well. But very much focusing on the things that you can do can be really helpful. And hopefully, there's then that sort of positive spillover effect that can help you manage all the kind of challenges that you might come across at this time of year, and help you navigate them to the best of your ability.
Yeah. Yeah, so I realized that we shared a lot of ideas today, and it's easy to feel like you need to do everything, but that's definitely not the goal as part of this session. And Laura made a really great point to focus on what the things that you can do. Pick one or two things that feel realistic and meaningful for you or your team or at home for your family, because small steps can make a difference, and it's about progress, not perfection. I think that's one of these, yeah, little slogans or mottos that I've heard more and more about. Progress, not perfection.
Yeah, there's been a few comments on the chat that I've sorry if I've missed some of them, but I have noticed a few people commenting on that kind of Instagram idea of perfection at this time of year,
Yeah,
and whether that's realistic or not, or achievable or not. But again, focusing on what you can do and seeing it as
yeah.
progress, and perhaps not aiming for perfection because I'm not honestly very sure that exists.
Absolutely not.
Mhm.
And again, also there's so many things that play into it. And as we close on the bits that Laura and I wanted to share, I wanted to leave one idea with you, and that's making festivities inclusive isn't just about adding a few adjustments. It's really about designing with everyone in mind from the start, if we can. And that's where also something that we call universal design principles come in, the strategies that make workplaces more accessible and effective for all employees. So it's not just those who have specific needs. And when we apply that thinking to celebrations, we create experiences that feel welcoming and flexible and enjoyable for everyone. And that's really what makes the celebration meaningful, when everyone feels like they can belong.
Absolutely. I feel very festive
Yeah.
just hearing you say that, Olivia. Thank you so much. So we do have a bit of time. If anyone has any questions, if you would like to either put them in the Q&A or we'll keep a eagle eye on the chat if they come through there instead, please do let us know. Now, there have been some points shared in the chat,
I'm
and
only just looking at it now.
yeah, there's been so many wonderful comments. Thank you so much for sharing. There's a,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, people talking about having meals on alternative days to Christmas Day to relieve that pressure. I think that sounds very interesting, actually. And there is a question that's come through as well. How do I get my employer to understand why you are pushing back on timelines or projects, please? It's a really interesting point. And I think actually, if it comes to that point where you feel that you do have to push back, by taking a moment just to reflect, what have I got on right now? What are the expectations on me to deliver? When am I to deliver that? And be able to just very concisely and clearly explain that to an employer that I, if I wish to push back on this task, for example, to allow me to focus and work on these other tasks to the best of my ability to ensure that they are done as effectively as possible. And if I take on more, that might impact on that effectiveness and my way of working. So, just to assure people perhaps that you're working to the best of your ability and you're not wanting to decrease that quality, as it were, of your work by taking on too much. Perhaps as well, rather than just sort of pushing back, offer an alternative. Is this something that I could take up when I return from annual leave? I could perhaps prioritize it at that point. So again, it's just that communication, which is something that we've talked about. It resonates throughout this topic as well, being as open as possible with that communication, just to help build that understanding.
Yeah, I completely agree, Laura. I think it also plays into this whole idea, I know it's easier said than done many times, but focusing on this quality over quantity. And it kind of plays into this idea of how assertively can I communicate my needs, to make sure that my needs and wants are met while still considering the business needs. Um, yeah, the time before Christmas is and the festive season is a tricky time, definitely.
Absolutely. And we just had another question come in, and this is a really interesting point. Um, and to lead on from what we just talked about there, the question is, would you have any comments on the ramp down considerations after Christmas and or the new year with the idea of returning to work? And I think that's something we maybe touched on um, more at the beginning of our webinar when we did talk about the idea of forward planning and actually planning for your return to work, blocking out that email time. Just already it makes me feel calmer about returning to work. But that can be done. I think you mentioned it yourself, Olivia, but blocking out time for specific tasks that are still on the to-do list.
Mhm.
And I think that can help you feel quite hopefully more controlled about that return to work.
Yeah. Yeah, having a sense of control, even if it's just a tiny sense, can just make all the difference. And I mean, I know also for my diary after Christmas or New Year and the festive season, it's not just that I have blocked out a little bit of time at the start. I've had to block out consistently a bit more time to make sure I can meet the demands of seeing clients going forward, the ones that I'm already seeing, rather than having new clients put in. So that's one of the ways in which I'm trying to also maintain a sense of control over my own diary.
Yeah, yeah, consider your ongoing commitments. Not that they don't just end at the end of the year, they will continue onwards. And again, just sort of planning for those as well can help hopefully ensure that you're meeting those expectations and not taking on too much as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Just, I can see another question in the chat. I'm sorry if I've missed any other ones, but just because that one's jumping out at me, how do you recommend we tell friends we get overwhelmed or even that we don't want pity for not celebrating and being on my own is what I enjoy?
mm,
Yeah, I mean, I guess like with friends, hopefully that's one especially where we feel more comfortable to say these things and to just kind of try and openly if it's via text message where you can really give a little bit of thought on what you want to say, or whether obviously you feel more comfortable to say it in person. But yeah, the pressures of, being sociable can sometimes be a lot to consider. And I know that myself. And it's again not always as easy as just, telling them.
no.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you have any thoughts, Laura.
I think sometimes it can be, especially if you feel comfortable, hopefully, if it's friends you do feel comfortable explaining, just to say that this time of year, what I'm really looking forward to is just a bit of peace and quiet and time on my own. You know, there is a box set I need to look at, there are chocolates I
Agreed.
need to eat. I just feel that I need to sit in my cozy clothes and relax a bit and just explain to them this is a bit of self-care.
Yeah,
This is something that you're doing because you might not want to opt out of everything. You want to ensure that you do have that energy to do the things that you do want to do.
yeah,
Um, and I think maybe sometimes just giving those examples
yeah.
of
So
like what you're going to do rather than saying, I don't want to do something, um, maybe kind of being able to explain what you are going to do and why that's going to help you could maybe
yeah,
help,
that's
hopefully.
such a good point. And it actually also reminded me that I've not done it last year for various reasons, but I think the year or two before,
Mhm.
I really strictly actually even turned off my mobile phone over the festive period. And I made sure that that didn't constantly, I mean, even just from a screen time perspective, I
Mhm.
mean, it can be such a slippery slope. Even for the likes of us, I guess, who have all the strategies and tools in our toolbox. We're not resistant or we're not immune to these challenges. And that was one thing I noticed. And it really helped me to do that. Can be hard, obviously, but it felt good.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it is sometimes helpful to remind ourselves that we can try to explain to others, we can try to ask them to understand why we're doing what we're doing. But then it's up to them how they take that on board and how they respond to that. And we can just sort of make peace with the fact that we've done what we can control. We've explained what we wanted to.
Yeah,
It's up to them how
yeah,
they use that information.
yeah,
And sometimes people just, again, we've said this so often, it is a busy time of year. And sometimes that can mean that people just don't have that time to maybe fully process that information in the way that you want. but you can't change that. You just maybe have to be able to accept that I've told you, I've explained. I don't mean any offense, if I
Mhm.
don't want to attend your event, I've been able to explain why. I'm trying to manage the expectations perhaps of others by explaining that, what your preferences are. But again, that's all you can do. That's all you can control, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's focusing on the things, it plays into the energy management again, focusing on the things that we can control or at the very least influence.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. There's definitely, comments in the chat. And again, I've not captured them all, but just people feeling overwhelmed at times and trying to get others to understand that. Um, and I think again, if people don't understand why perhaps you don't want to attend an event, for example, that that's not because they don't care. It's perhaps just again because they have so much else to consider as well. So they've maybe not quite understood at that point, but hopefully you can, just work on them year on year, and hopefully they will understand at some point. Um, and not everyone's the same all the time. Not every year is the same every time either. So there are those
exact
differences as well.
progress, not perfection.
Absolutely. Yes.
Mm. Yeah. Um, No, it's good to see all the engagement in the chat. Also engagement with each other, so the audience among each other.
Yeah, yeah. And people have really been posting some really open messages. Really,
Yeah.
it's nice to see, isn't it? It is fantastic. There is a comment. I do like this. I hope this means that our webinar has felt successful. Somebody has said that they hate Christmas, always have, and I'm only just coming to the realization during this webinar why. And
We'll
I'm
take
hoping,
it.
I'm hoping is that a good thing? I hope so. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess it's just it's lifelong learning. Even in my line of work, working with neurodivergent individuals, day in, day out, every so often somebody says something that still so deeply resonates with me. Even just kind of from a personal perspective. And yeah,
hmm
if
hmm
if if this webinar has helped understand that also with the feelings towards Christmas time, that's yeah,
yeah,
more understanding for you.
yeah, yeah. And there's a couple of comments as well. People just saying that the gifts might be too stressful. Receiving gifts can feel stressful, and absolutely. But the best gift is just being with those that they love. And I think, again, that is so important that sometimes it's that saying, isn't it? It's the presence, not the presence, that is really
Yeah,
important. It's being with people. And being with people might feel overwhelming at times, but hopefully there's still elements of you being able to truly enjoy that as well.
yeah, right. Yeah, I just saw a comment saying I wish I'd opted out on Elf on the Shelf.
Yeah,
Um,
goodness.
yeah, yeah,
That does seem a huge amount of effort, and well done anybody who does continue with Elf on the Shelf, especially year after year. That is,
yeah.
yeah.
No, absolutely.
Mhm. There's a comment just towards the end there saying that they sometimes feel guilty about saying no when asked to attend something and almost feel angry with themselves, or sorry, actually feel angry with themselves. And I think that is perhaps, I would, recommend going back over what we talked about earlier, that idea of that reflection of what you can do to help yourself and take that control and kind of create that positivity for yourself, and just help to be kind to yourself as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, showing yourself some compassion. And again, I know easier said than done, but it's just a continuous learning situation. And yeah, even if the realization sinks in later, that's okay. And that just at least also allows it to kind of feed into future things.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. And I hope that kind of also deals, there was a comment in the chat about as a neurodiverse mom with ADHD parenting two neurodiverse children, how do I keep my negativity about Christmas to a minimum? And again, hopefully the kind of positive action that you can do for yourself, for your children, about what you can do
Yeah,
to help yourself, restore that mental energy, be kind to yourself,
yeah.
and encourage your children to do that as well in different activities could help perhaps balance out that negativity.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, one of the things that I've often felt, it's so much easier to advocate for others, and that often might then be our kids than it is for ourselves. And I hope that resonates with the person who posted that. Just kind
Yeah.
of, make them the focus if you can, your kids, and try and see not without kind of not dismissing your own needs, but yeah, just kind of starting there can sometimes be easier because we're so often kinder on others than we are on ourselves. Which I think was also one of the last comments I saw. Showing other people compassion is way easier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it can
Yeah.
maybe be a starting point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a lovely note to end on, Olivia. If
Yeah.
anyone else does have any questions or comments, we do have a moment if you want to post them on. Um, but thank you so much, Olivia. We've had a wonderful time organizing, creating the content for this webinar. It has been an absolute joy to deliver it with you. And thank you, everybody that's joined us today. And for all of those that have shared in the chat as well, an extra big thank you. We've really appreciated your comments.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining.